my school code is BA. So just give me a smile or a nod when you're ready. Mr. Parliamentary. We're supposed to be one of the strongest countries in the world. But at a time when we've just experienced a net job loss, and when millions of single mothers and single fathers can't afford to put food on the table for their families, I hardly think that we live up to that hype. But Mr. Brown, it's because I'm not willing to let the perfect be the enemy of the good that I'm standing on the affirmation of today's legislation, and you should too. So first, pass today's bill because only a small price increase is needed for businesses to pay for the minimum wage increase. Now, Mr. Brown, you're concerned about small businesses and big businesses alike, and I share that concern, but that's actually why I want to pass today's bill. Because according to an article from the New York Times of 2015, a minimum wage would increase the incomes of America's lower wage workforce by a total of over $51 billion, shifting these sums from the pockets of people who don't shop at smaller businesses to those who do. American low-wage families tend to spend every dollar they earn, so a large minimum wage hike would constitute an enormous permanent economic stimulus package, but entirely funded by the private sector. Now, Mr. Parliamentary has just told us that we're experiencing a net job loss and we're in a recession. So it seems to me that by passing today's bill, we're going to be solving for that problem because we're allowing these minimum wage workers to actually live off of a livable income. Now, Mr. Brown, if you truly care about lower income constituents and about the solvency of today's legislation, then stand with me and pass today's bill. But secondly, in the face of a net job loss, I think it's pretty important that we boost employment. And that's exactly what today's bill is going to do. According to Ken Jacobs, the chairman of labor research right here at UC Berkeley, from 2004 to 2011, research shows that private sector employment grew 5% in San Francisco and 3% in Santa Clara County. Employers absorbed higher wage costs largely through significantly reduced turnover, lower absenteeism, fewer grievances, and improved customer service. Now that's going to solve for the net loss of jobs that our country has just experienced. So pass today's bill so we can solve that problem and provide for our constituents. But next, I'd like to touch on something that Mr. Cota brought up in his speech, which is that states can do better, so there's no use to implement federal legislation. But Mr. Cota, according to a Wall Street Journal, in states where raising the minimum wage was economically feasible, they reported no change in the minimum wage index. So unless we pass today's bill and set a precedent on the federal level, we're not going to see that change in state law. And that reason, you have to stand with me and pass today's bill. So at the core of today's debate, understand one thing. No legislation is perfect, but today's legislation is good and it's what our constituents need. For this reason, pass today's bill and stand with me, stand for our constituents. Thank you.
Time of that speech is 3 minutes, 1 second. Cross-examiners, please rise. We'll have Mr. Brown and Mr. Cota.
If we're in a recession, that means people are poorer, right?
Of course.
So then there needs to be more welfare spending.
Of course.
So if minimum wage causes benefits to go down, doesn't that mean the poor are still not benefiting?
Like I cited in my speech, when we actually increase minimum wage, it's going to benefit businesses because now they're going to have, they don't have to provide those same benefits.
But a $3 an hour increase doesn't cover $938 a month for housing that TAN recipients get.
Okay, Senator, what you need to understand is that when we increase the minimum wage, we're indexing it for inflation, so they are going to be able to provide for those services.
Senator, how do you believe that companies on the securities exchange would react to a higher minimum wage across the United States?
Okay, I honestly think that if we leave it up to the states, they're not going to implement it simply because they're under the influence of lobbyists.
How would companies react if you did this legislation?
Okay, companies would react negatively, but I don't care about the companies in comparison to the constituents that would benefit when we pass today's bill.
Wouldn't that hurt the stock market?
Okay, one thing that we have to understand is that when we increase jobs, which I just showed you that we will, then the stock market is going to increase.
Thank you, Ms. Mahal.
Thank you.
Thank you.